my name is Ashley Poston. I am the author of GEEKERELLA, Princess and the Fangirl, Heart of Iron, Soul of Stars, and coming at you next year, Bookish and the Beast, and Among the Beasts and Briars. And you might be asking yourself, why is the author in residence of Epic Reads telling us her books? And it's because today we are going to be traveling down my memory lane of favorite fairy tale retellings, because there's a whole lot of them, because I love fairy tale retellings like something fierce. I think it comes from me being a little child and watching all those Disney movies. Disney super corrupted me when I was little. I'm just a sucker for fairy tale retellings. If like there's something on a book that says a retelling of blank, I'm like, what? I'll just like black out and I'll just wake up having paid for the book like 5 minutes later with it in my hand walking out the door, Barnes & Noble. It's just the way it works. And so anyway, I am going to bring to you some of my favorite fairy tale retellings of all time, and the list is kind of long, so come with me on this journey, friends. It is going to be a lot of fun. And so here we go. And so we are going to kick off this whirlwind adventure through retellings by talking about my favorite Cinderella retellings, because Cinderella takes up a bit of my heart and soul. I mean, Ever After by Drew Barrymore, so good. I mean, Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella with Brandy, oh, just please. Even the Hilary Duff one where she's texting and it's just, oh my gosh, they're all cracked to me. And so I have two favorite Cinderella retellings, and the first one is Ash by Malinda Lo. It pubbed, I think, about 10 years ago. It was the first queer Cinderella retelling that I ever read, and I just really loved it. I think it's gotten a new repackage now, and so I highly recommend it. Please go check it out. It was really good when I read it, and it has stuck with me all this time. So please go and check it out. But if you like a more lighter fare and contemporary things, a la, you know, the Hilary Duff Cinderella, or oh, it's called Not Another Cinderella Story. That's the Hilary Duff one. I knew it. Anyway, if you like a more contemporary twist on the Cinderella tale, I highly recommend Geek Charming by Robin Palmer. And you might be asking yourself, Geek Charming, that has the same title as, you're right, it has the same title as that Disney movie, well, the Disney Channel original movie that was like really cute, but let me tell you, it's the exact same thing. It's like based off of it. So anyway, the book is 10 times better. The book is always 10 times better, but it's so sweet and cute, and it's just, oh, it's so good. It's like the popular girl is the godmother, and like she's like, you know, basically popularizing this like really geeky dude, and of course they end up falling in love. And anyway, it's so cute and so geeky. And so if you're a fan of that Disney Channel original movie, definitely check out the book, because oh, it's so sweet. It's just that candy, the best kind of candy. So if Cinderella is not quite your thing, maybe Snow White will be. And I have a few Snow White retellings that are just so good. And first up is a book that I think I've included in another video, but I'm going to bring it back because it is still one of my absolute favorites. And it is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. It is a villain story of Snow White, and what more could you want? It's so good. It's one of my absolute favorites. And the cover is just so beautiful too. It was like YA Snake in his prime, and I love it so much. But if the villain story really isn't your jam, I highly recommend Stray by Elissa Sussman. It's not quite a Snow White story. It is, but it focuses on a fairy godmother, but there is a lot of Snow White elements in it. It's hard to explain, and I'm not going to explain it because then I'll end up ruining the entire book for you. That's why the summary is so vague. But please read it. It's so good, and it made my like ace heart go pitter patter. So please, I highly recommend it. Give this book some more love, because it definitely did not get the love it deserved. And speaking of love, it does not deserve. Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Brashardoust. Also a Snow White retelling-esque, but it's definitely darker, of the darker fare. I can't really say anything else, so I'm gonna spoil it. But isn't Snow White, like saying it's a Snow White retelling, also already spoiling it? I mean, it's so hard to not spoil retellings because you're like, oh, well, you know, there's gonna be a huntsman and there's gonna be a heart somewhere in there and maybe a few dudes who share a house. Anyway, please read Girls of Snow and Glass. It is fantastic. It is just, if you liked Damsel by Elena K. Arnold, then you will absolutely love Girls of Snow and Glass. Okay, and so this next one isn't quite a fairy tale retelling. It's a legend. It is Mulan. I'm really excited for the Disney remake coming out. It looks really cool. I'm really excited for it. But anyway, so if you really love Mulan retellings, I highly recommend The Magnolia Sword by Sherry Thomas. It is one of my favorite Mulan retellings. It is so good, and it's nothing like the Disney movie. Just put that out of your head. There's no talking dragons, no Mushus, no lucky crickets. Just get away from that as far as it can. And also, I would love to recommend Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh. There's really nothing else I can say besides it's Renee Ahdieh, so you know there's gonna be some super swoon-worthy moments. It's a Mulan retelling. It's just, oh, and that cover is just, oh, I have so much passionate love for that cover. It's so beautiful, and the story itself is just so amazing. I love it so much. It's a duology. It is fantastic. So if you love Mulan retellings, I highly recommend it. And speaking of Mulan retellings that are really awesome, there's just so many of them. I also recommend Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. And if you're thinking, wait, Elizabeth Lim, why do I know that name? It is because she also wrote a Twisted Tales version of Mulan for Disney, so I think she knows her material real well. And also Spin the Dawn is a great like twist on the Mulan story, and it involves a seamstress instead, and it's very, very, very good, and I highly recommend it, and it's like lush and deep and like just so romantic. I love it a lot. But I also really like Reflections, which is her Mulan Twisted Tale. It's really good and it's fun, and like all the Twisted Tales, you just go what if, and it's fun. I really love it. So please check out both of those by Elizabeth Lim. This next one is also not quite, like, I wouldn't call it like a fairy tale retelling, mostly because everything that I know this fairy tale from like involves David Bowie. So yeah, you know what this one is, right? It is the Goblin King retellings, because there's quite a few of them that are really good, but just when I was little, I just really loved the Goblin King and just his whole aesthetic. It was, I just wanted to be Sarah, and I wanted to go into, you know, the labyrinth, and I don't know why she left. Why would she leave the Goblin King? It was David Bowie. He would have given her the world. And so, because of that frustration, I went out seeking fairy tale retellings of the Goblin King, and I have 3 that I absolutely love. And the first one, of course, is Wintersong by S. Jae-Jones. It's so good. And the Goblin King is chef's kiss. It's so swoon-worthy, and it's a duology. And it's just so good, and it plays on classical music and like magic, and like, you know, it like subverts a lot of fairy tale tropes that you find in the Goblin King, and I just really love it. But if you want a more traditional Goblin King retelling, I also really love The Stolen Songbird by Danielle Jensen. It was one of my favorites. It has still stuck with me to this day because it's just so swoon-worthy. And it also involves a lot of music, but in a different way, in a more magical way, and I just find it very interesting. In the world is so cool around this book, and I think it's a trilogy, so you have a lot of Goblin King to look forward to. And speaking of really good, the very first Goblin King retelling that I ever read was The Hollow Kingdom by Clare Dunkle. I just love it so much. It was one of my first fairy tale retellings that I ever read, and I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And I absolutely love how it's dry and it's very straightforward, and it has kind of like that crunchy organic feel to it of like the early aughts, and I just, oh, it's so good and I love it. And I really love the cover too. It's like dark and mysterious, and I really, really like the Goblin King too, and like the goblins and the trolls down beneath the mountain are just really cool, and the society and the politics surrounding it are cool too. And it doesn't have any like sequels, but it does have companion novels with it, which I think is really cool, and I highly recommend all of them. It's just, oh gosh, I need to go back and reread that series. It was so good. So like there will always be some fairy tales that you like more than others. Like for me, I really don't care about the Six Swans retelling from the Brothers Grimm. It's just not one of my favorites. Princess, like the Swan Princess, yeah, sure, please give me that. That's great. You know, the whole moon and the turning into a swan and everything. Yeah, sure. But for some reason, I just never connected with Six Swans. That was until I read Princess of Thorns by Stacey J. This is one of my favorite retellings of all time. It's just really swoon-worthy, and it's a dude who is like part of the curse of the Six Swans, and the main female character, if she kisses anyone, they automatically fall in love with her, and I just really love it because of course you know they're gonna end up kissing, and I love this a lot. It's one of my absolute favorite retellings of like all of them. So please check it out. It's one of my favorites, and I really like the cover too. It's very like whimsical, and it reminds me a lot of An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. But anyway, so please check it out. It is one of my favorites. Give it some love. And so now we're gonna go on to the next one. And next up on the list is Arthurian retellings, which, yeah, okay, you caught me. Arthurian retellings really aren't fairy tale retellings, but I mean, technically it's the same thing. There's enchanted swords and witches and ladies of the lakes and, you know, and princesses. It works, okay? It works. We're going to pretend Arthurian legends are fairy tales for this video because there are quite a few that I really absolutely love. Just quick shout out to Avalon High by Meg Cabot. I read this as a teenager. I loved it as a teenager. And also the Disney Channel original movie. Hey, remember that one? It was so bad. It was so bad. Okay, and now I'm gonna get to some really good Arthurian legend retellings, and first up on the list is Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Cori McCarthy. I just love it. It is what if King Arthur was a girl and if it was set in the future. Like, what doesn't sell you on that, right? Just what, like, give me that in my face right now. It is so good, and it's one of my favorite Arthurian retellings of all time, and there's only one other that I really love that like is tied for favorite Arthurian retelling, and that is The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. I think it just came out, and it's one of my absolute favorites. Like, Guinevere is she's my bae. I love her so much. She is my favorite. And The Guinevere Deception puts a twist on the whole Guinevere retelling because she kind of gets the crappy end of the stick in some of those retellings, and I just don't really like that for my girl, right? And so of course Kiersten White rights those wrongs, and I freaking loved it. It was so good. I loved it so much. Oh, Guinevere, just be still in my heart. Okay, but if Arthurian legends really aren't your speed, maybe you're like me and every Christmas you were just waiting for the Nutcracker Prince to come on Disney so you can watch that trash fire over and over and over again because you loved it as much as I did. Oh, I love the Nutcracker Prince so much. Like, it was the animated one, you know, where like Clare has Peter O'Toole in it as the general dude, and like Clare has to fight the Rat King, and then she goes into the Sugar Plum Land with the prince, and the prince ends up being like Drosselmeyer's nephew or something. Anyway, it's such trash and I love it so much. And so since I watched that as a kid, I've been on the lookout for really good Nutcracker retellings because that's just the kind of person I am. And I found one a few years ago that just took my heart and ran with it. It's called Winterspell by none other than Clare Legrand. Just, I should have known that like way back when she would just take my heart and run with it, because I love Winterspell so much. It is like a really cool twist on the Nutcracker retelling, and it's a lot more like adventure and, you know, death and destruction than like, oh, romance and sugar plum fairies. But like you get like Clare Legrand's like amazing prose and the way she weaves stories together, and just, I really liked it. So please go and give it some love this holiday season. And if you find any other Nutcracker retellings that you really like, please let me know, because my AO3 well is running dry. There are only so many fanfics. But okay, if like you're not in the mood for Arthurian legends or the Nutcracker or any of those fairy tale retellings, maybe you're actually a lost boy looking for Neverland again. So here's some of my favorite Peter Pan retellings, because there's a bunch of those too that I absolutely love. And of course, like with my villainous heart, I am going to recommend Never Never by Brianna Shrum, because like she's one of the only people who doesn't do Hook dirty. And she like crafts this compelling narrative about Hook and like Peter Pan, who's just kind of really weird and creepy, which I mean he kind of really is in the original play and in the books, but like she like hammers that home, and I just really loved it. And like Hook can just steal my heart and take it and just run. I love him so much. He's like the best brooding Byronic Hook that you could ever want to read about. Speaking of Hook taking my heart and running with it, I am also going to recommend Unhooked by Lisa Maxwell, purely because it is absolute fic crack. Like, it is an OC going into Neverland and basically having a love triangle with Peter Pan and Hook. And honestly, I am super here for it. I just like, you give me all the good trash and I will read all of it. And so it's one of my absolute favorite like Peter Pan retellings, simply because it's fun, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's super like swoon worthy. And sometimes when I don't want to go on AO3 for my, you know, self-insert fix, I would like to go to a bookshelf sometimes, because isn't that what books are for? Like putting yourself in Bella Swan's shoes sometimes? I mean, I don't mind it. It's just a lot of fun. Highly recommended. But if you aren't up for Never Never or Unhooked, I also highly recommend Peter Darling by Austin Chant. Peter Darling is one of my favorite queer retellings. It is trans, it is good, it is my favorite. So please check it out and just swoon with me. There's just so many swoony feels. So many swoony feels. Okay, before I get to my very last list of fairy tale retellings that have to do with my very favorite fairy tale, which I'll tell you about in a minute, I want to list off a few hodgepodge retellings, like a few series that encompass a few different fairy tales and smash them together, because it takes talent to do that, and these are some of my absolute favorites. And so without further ado, here are some hodgepodge sort of amalgamations of my favorite fairy tales. And so first up on the list is the Theater Luminata trilogy by Lisa Menchev. I think I've included this one before as well, but you know, I always like scream about my favorite books just all the time, so it's fine. I love this trilogy. It's so good. It just has a lot of different fairy tales and retellings, just period, and it has some Shakespeare. It has some theater. It has a little bit of everything, and like sometimes there are small little like nuggets of like, hey, if you know this, you know this sort of thing. And like, I constantly find myself like being that gif of Captain America going, hey, I know that reference, you know? So I really love the series. If you love like theater or plays, I highly recommend it. There are just so many cool little nods in the entire series, and it's super swoon worthy. And it's one of my favorite love triangles in any book series ever. And that's that's something. And of course, this list would not be complete without me talking about CJ Redwine's fairy tale series. It starts with The Shadow Queen, and I think the most recent one is The Blood Spell. It's a bunch of fairytale retellings, but like with a twist, and I really absolutely love them. They're all cool and inventive, and they have like surprise stuff in it. Like in The Shadow Queen, there's shape-shifting dragons, which I am all about dragons, but like who knew that in a Snow White retelling you would have like shape-shifting dragons? And so I love little surprises like that, and CJ Redwine just knocks it out of the ballpark with every single one of these books. So I highly recommend the series. Also, I think I talked about this book before, but I'm gonna bring it back in again too. It is Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. I love it so much. It's just an amalgamation of a bunch of different fairy tales, but the majority of it is St. George and the Dragon, but with a twist, obviously. And it is just so good and so thought-provoking. And the author also has another book coming out soon called Red Hood. It's a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, but with a twist, obviously. And I cannot wait to read it. Please, I want to put it in my face. It's just, after Damsel, like, this author was an auto-buy from me. It's that good. And speaking of auto-buys, if you want a quick read, like novella reads, and you kind of are looking for a book that straddles the middle between YA and adult, I highly recommend Every Heart a Doorway by Sheldon Maguire. It is basically what happens when people come back from portal fantasies. Like, what do they do after they've had these amazing adventures? And how do they cope with that? And they're all novellas, and they're really quick reads, and I love them so much. I recently read them. Like, I was like, oh, I'll read that when I get to it. Like, I'll read it later. And then I was on vacation, and I was like, well, here's the novella right here, and like an hour and a half later I was done with it, and I was like, no, that's the only one I have. And so you will want to binge the entire series, and the author is still coming out with more of them, and I cannot wait. And they each are companion novels to each other, and so they each have a different story inside of them because they aren't in chronological order, and I love it so much. It's so well thought out, and has all the tropes that I have ever wanted in my life, and I love it so much. Everyone needs to get on board with Every Heart a Doorway. Literally everyone. That's your homework. And so, after I fangirled over all of my favorite other retellings, we are now going to get to my pride and joy, my collection of Beauty and the Beast retellings. Because if I am anything, I am trash for Beauty and the Beast. Absolute trash. I'm so excited, my favorite one. Okay, so I love Beauty and the Beast retellings like something fierce. I grew up on Beauty and the Beast. I have read every iteration of Beauty and the Beast from every different culture, and I love it so much. I just love it. I love it. It's my favorite of all time. And so, as a fairy tale that is near and dear to my heart, I have a pretty high standard when it comes to Beauty and the Beast retellings. So, without further ado, I'm going to give you my favorites because there's a lot of Beauty and the Beast retellings out there. Like, holy crap, there's a lot of them. And so, I have read them all, so you don't have to. So, here are my favorite ones. And the first one is, of course, obviously, it's Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley. She also wrote Beauty, which is also a very good Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I really like Rose Daughter just a tiny bit more, because it's like more swoon-worthy, and it's so good. I love it. I think I'm gonna go and reread it again. It's one of my absolute favorites. And so I love the way Robin McKinley crafts like the Beauty and the Beast and the world around it and all of the outside forces that are like against them, and it's one of those books that is like a long walk through an enchanted forest. You're just going, and everything is kind of like golden and like magical, but nothing is really all that scary. And they're like shadows that are lurking in the distance, but you know they're not going to come and like bite your head off. And so you're just walking down this path, and it's delightful, and it's so romantic, and I love it so much. Rose Daughter by Rob McKinley, please go and enjoy. I also want to give a shout out to The Ancient Magus Bride by Cori Yamazaki, mostly because it's trash. It's like crack. You just can't stop reading it. It is one of my favorite manga, simply because it is sweet and it's soft, and I will literally die for like the beast. It's just, well, for the Ancient Magus. I mean, I will die for him. He is so good and pure, and the main heroine, she grows on you after a while because she does have a character arc, which is not prevalent in a lot of Beauty and the Beast stories, let me tell you. So I really honestly enjoyed it. Please read it, it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's also very trashy, so there are some elements to it that I would not recommend, but overall it's still on the list. I also want to give a shout out to A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kremer. It's a portal fantasy and it's Beauty and the Beast. It's two of my favorite things of all time, so there's really nothing else to say. It's portal fantasy and it's Beauty and the Beast. It's just my two favorite things. It's just crack. It's crack to me. I'll just shove it all in my face. And next up is not technically a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but that is only because it is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is a subset of Beauty and the Beast. It is technically my favorite type of Beauty and the Beast retelling. I love East of the Sun, West of the Moon. If you don't know about the fairy tale, it's about a girl who is taken by a polar bear and to his castle, and every night when she's falling asleep, she has a bedfellow who, like, she knows about, but she cannot look at her bedfellow for a year. And if she manages to not look at him for a year, then the curse is broken, because trust and all that. Weird, I know. Needless to say, that doesn't quite happen, because, like, there's a stranger in the bed. Of course you're gonna look. This was built for failure. And so she has to go and, like, defeat an evil troll queen. I just love it. Like, it's just polar bear and Beauty and the Beast and all of a sudden trolls. It's just, I love it. It's so good. And so anyway, with that said, my favorite East of the Sun, West of the Moon retelling is East by Edith Pattou. There's another book that just came out called West by Edith Pattou, which I haven't read yet, but I want to, because I think it's a sequel or it's a companion. Either way, I have it on my bookshelf. I just haven't read it yet because I am also working on my own Beauty and the Beast retellings, and two are coming out next year. Bookish and the Beast is coming out, and also Among the Beasts and Briars, and I just cannot wait. It's just going to be the year of Beauty and the Beast for me. Oh, I'm so excited. It's gonna love all of it. And because I am who I am, I'm also gonna give a shout out to Liz Braswell, who wrote Tale as Old as Time, the Twisted Tales from Disney, and oh buddy is that crack. There are just so many little nuggets in there that I'm like, oh, and oh, it was really good. I liked it. It was, what else do you think would be besides like a twisted? Anyway, I liked it. But also, hey, if you like Liz Braswell, and you're like, well, why does her name sound familiar? It's because she's written a lot of Twisted Tales. But before she wrote Twisted Tales, she wrote Fairytale Retellings, and they were all pretty good. And so I was like, oh, well, she knows what she's doing, and she does. I highly recommend them. They're all super, super good. And my last Beauty and the Beast rec is my favorite, just of all time, hands down. It is the one book that was like, yeah, I want to write YA now. This is something I really want to do. And that book is Valiant by Holly Black. It is not your typical Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I will definitely file it into Beauty and the Beast just as much as I will file Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne-Jones into Beauty and the Beast, because it 100% is. It's just with a twist. And so shout out to Valiant and Howl's Moving Castle. And that's it. Those are my Beauty and the Beast retellings that I super love. If you have any that you really like and you want me to read, that I haven't talked about yet, please respond in the comments because I am dying for some good Beauty and the Beast retelling. Just put them all in my face, just every single one of them. And that is it for this video. There were so many good ones. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I just love retelling so much. If there is a favorite retelling that you have that I didn't talk about, please respond in the comments below. I am always looking for new recs, especially in the fairy tale department. I just love them so much. And until next time, my name is Ashley Poston, and happy reading, y'all. Bye.